Hello and welcome to the Pittsburgh City Council budget hearings. I am Councilperson Bob Charlin and I chair the Committee on Human Resources. For this hearing, we will be hearing from the Office of Municipal Investigations. I'd like to invite those from OMI to join us at the table. While you're joining us, I'll ask that our Budget Director, Peter McDevitt, give a brief overview of this department.
Thank you, Councilman. The Office of Municipal Investigations is responsible for coordinating the receipt, analysis, and investigation of citizens' complaints of alleged misconduct by employees of the City of Pittsburgh. OMI provides the following core services: allegations of misconduct, pre-employment investigation, residency complaints. There is a total of 8 full-time positions in the 2026 budget, which is the same as it was in 2025, and there is no other changes to their budgets. And they don't have any capital, and they don't have any trust funds, and they don't have any fees. That's all I got.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. Now for the department, please introduce yourselves, including your title.
Yeah, Erin Bruni, Manager, Office of Municipal Investigations.
And I will note that we are joined by Councilwoman Warwick, and others may be joining online shortly here.
Okay.
Like to go into your hearing?
Sure. I have a very brief slideshow presentation for you, mainly just some of our statistics. In 2024, we opened 210 cases. 181 of those were against members of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. 29 of those were against other city departments as a whole. So far in 2029, we've opened 199 cases, with 173 of those against the members of the Bureau of Police, 28 against other city departments as a whole. And this year we started a new case numbering system so that we could specifically track anything related to domestic violence involving city employees, because those do go to the Domestic Violence Review Board, which I am a part of. We had 4 of those referrals at least tracked specifically this year. As a side note to that, I'm kind of working with HR to update the city policy related to domestics. A lot of that is self-reporting. If you're the party to a PFA or domestic incident, it is up to you to report to a supervisor. But that's where the language kind of stops. So if there's multiple levels of management or supervision, it might not make it out of a specific duty location. So we are trying to change the language so it has to go up through your complete chain of command and then have a formal referral to the Domestic Violence Review Board. Moving on. Another big chunk of our work is pre-employment background investigations. In 2024, we conducted 147 of those, 44 for fire, 7 for the March class of EMS. We do not do the backgrounds anymore for EMS. Those are handled as a standard through HR, and then they do the monitoring through the Freedom House. So we're out of that process. And we did 47 for the May police class, 50 for the November police class. So far in 2025, we have conducted 43 police backgrounds for the June 2025 class, 54 for the November 2025 class, and we actually are processing currently 35 police candidates, hoping to wrap those up before the Thanksgiving holiday. We did engage in some process improvements with HR just to cut down on the amount of unnecessary work that we were doing, just because based on the timeline, literally as soon as fitness was done, we would start with polygraph exams, which mean we had to do a lot of work in advance for candidates that might not pass the fitness test. So we just simply shifted the polygraph exams 1 week further so that we're only running checks on people that are going to be processed, as opposed to running a bunch of people through systems and then throwing that work away, and then also running people through systems when it was completely unnecessary. But that seems to be working and has cut down a lot of wasted work. I took heed of some of the cost-saving efforts that you wanted everyone to bring to the table. I will say that currently, with 6 weeks left, I think I have $36,000 left in my budget. I don't think that I don't really spend my budget fully. We do have to engage in a few things that cost money. I will say that we do not incur a lot of overtime. In addition to the civilian investigators we have, which is when we say we have a staff of 8, it's actually more like 13, because we have 5 police officers detailed to our office on a permanent basis, but their salaries come out of the police budget. So when we're doing police processing, in order to like not clog up the wheels, the Bureau has been very good about sending us a couple detectives depending on our need and availability that they can come help us for 6 weeks, knock out the backgrounds, we can keep complaints going, and then they go back to their duty location. So, you know, it's a little bit neutral, but at the same time, we're not incurring overtime costs in that regard when we're doing processing. Also for PLEAC, which would be the Bureau of Police's accreditation process, it requires internal affairs investigators to have training specific to that role. It doesn't necessarily say how many hours, it's just that we have to have annual training. So we have taken advantage of, there's a couple companies actually where you can sign up for a seminar and they send you one link and it might be like $150. Everyone can sit in the room and watch the same training, and then I can send the link out. Everyone takes the test. So instead of sending everyone out of town or paying individual registration fees for everyone, it's a much less cost. And also this year we had an opportunity to take a body-worn camera training that was offered by the state FOP for free. Finally here, I would say we renegotiated our agreement with our case management system, which is called IA Pro. That system did have 3 components, 2 of which the Bureau opted out of using, but we were still paying for a while. So we absorbed the contract. They took off the other 2 components. So now we are paying for it, but we certainly have enough money in our budget alone. So it's coming out of the police budget, and it's probably saving the city around $7,000 for them not using 2 components because they can use those components in Axon. And then finally, I just put together some of the lists of the community events that we have attended. It's nice for our staff because basically, you know, we're sitting and just watching a lot of body-worn videos and cranking out reports. So it's nice to get out and engage with people because a lot of our stuff is just over the phone as well. We did Take Our Kids to Work Day, presented along with Beth at the Citizen Police Academy in both March and October. We tabled at the Civic Learning Youth Day event downstairs in August, and we are scheduled to present at the Student Police Academy in December. So that is really all I have.
Thank you, Director.
Yep.
And I guess we can start. Did anyone join? Okay. Start with Councilwoman Warwick.
Yeah, thank you for being here and for all your work, and also for the cost savings. I appreciate that. So for the Domestic Violence Review Board, that is when there is a city employee who is
Involved in a domestic, yes.
right on either side of or if they have a PFA.
No, on either side,
On either
even
side.
if it's an incident. So sometimes
Okay.
we have had, you know, maybe just a verbal domestic and maybe involving a police officer. What I've done really for that is the Bureau is required to send it over to us for an investigation. But if I'm able to watch body worn and see that the officers that responded handled it appropriately, that it truly was a verbal, there's no injuries, there's no property damage, everyone just kind of went their separate ways for the night, then we keep it in the system and then they're monitored per the guidelines in the policy, but we don't do any more formal investigation unless it's warranted for like a subsequent incident or something like that. So.
And for the other, for the non-police related ones, are those like complaints against city workers just while they're at work?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not like like someone has a personal dispute with a city worker and then comes.
Sometimes neighbors will call because they know their neighbor works for the city.
Right, but
and
that's
will call
not-
and complain, and it all depends on the circumstances specific to that.
Okay.
Were they acting in the capacity of a city employee? Do they hold themselves out to be a city employee at that point?
Right.
But otherwise, we just tell them that we're not going to take that. That's a personal matter.
Okay.
Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it's city employees that are at work. I will say the majority of those complaints, and this is around the gamut, is discourteous behavior towards the public. You know, like somebody engages with somebody says something inappropriate back. That's usually where we see our complaints, the highest number of our complaints.
Okay,
So.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I have really any other questions. I always like Sounds like you run a tight ship, a small, efficient department.
We try.
That's always nice.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good. I guess I don't have any other questions, so thank
Okay.
you for all your work. Maybe I'll think of something as the councilman proceeds, but
Not joined by anyone else? All right. So thank you so much for being here and for talking with us, and also being prepared on the fiscal belt tightening question that we're asking everyone. That said, you're a small but mighty department that helps create the public trust in city employees here, and so I do appreciate all the work that you're able to do. And also, I really I don't know that I've ever seen as much of an effort as this last year of your office being at community meetings or community events.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic that you're able to do that and are able to put that in place. Maybe you've been doing that before, but I really did notice it a lot this year. And I think we often get like a complaint about, city employee eating lunch and all they do is take naps in their truck or something. That's a common thing. Having you be available to be the person, like, is that actually an issue for you? Let's put in a complaint. Let's look into it.
Yeah.
I think that, again, instills the trust in us as a city here. So I really do appreciate that public facing effort that
Thank
you have.
Yeah, when we are at the, especially City in the Streets, that's just been the most public. I do tell folks, I'm like, hopefully you never need us, but here's where we
Yeah.
are, and this is kind of how we operate. And if they are part of a community organization, we'll come to any meeting we're invited to. Just come, and then we can sit down a little bit more, personally, one-on-one or with a smaller group, and kind of talk and answer questions. It's hard to do that when it's like rowdy and that kind of thing. But there's not a lot of us, but there's usually someone available at some point in time to come to a community meeting. So always happy to.
Yeah, very much appreciate it. And I've got some neighborhoods that like constantly have that complaint of like, well, city employees, they're all, and they've got a lot of things they want to say. So every so often, I think it is important. And you did attend that event last year.
Yeah.
I think it's good every so often to remind people, like, we can investigate this if you'd like.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of people don't want to actually go through, and we do want our employees to be able to take lunch.
Yeah.
So I'm pro lunch.
Yes.
I don't have a whole lot of questions for you. I guess you mentioned a new tracker system. I know that in the times that we've talked before, when I ask you like for some data on things, you do want to be careful on what you say. But what other complaints besides just the public, feeling that someone was rude to them? What other complaints do you see?
I would say as a whole, we get a lot of neglect of duty complaints that come in. People are unhappy with response times, or maybe a police report wasn't done that they felt should have been done. And that's not just on the police side at this point. We are seeing that from other departments that, lack of, I'm emailing, no one's getting back to me. Initially, sometimes if, someone calls in and an incident just happened and there's not a police report yet, we ask them to wait a week or two, and then we usually call the zone to say, like, what is going on here? Maybe it's just not approved, something like that. But, people are getting a little bit upset because now, with past days, and people are on overtime, and then they're on a past day for 3 days, and then things are getting signed off. So I think that has been frustrating for some citizens. I think also in the neglected duty realm, it happens with PLI because people don't understand that process. So they put a 311 complaint in and then nothing gets done about it. But it's also because in the back, people are being, issued a violation, but then they have an opportunity to abate. And so for the person that wanted something done right now, it's not fast enough for them, but they're not recognizing the due process on the other person's side. So sometimes that is up to us to then like get that information and relay it back to be like, this is what's taking so long. So that person at least has a better answer than nothing's being done.
That's good. I mean, that is, we talked about this a little bit earlier this year, but one of the complaints that we'll often get with a 311 system is that I put something in and nothing got done.
Yeah.
And it's like, people don't understand that the 311 system is a work order system and is not, by putting, I want a retaining wall built here, that doesn't mean that we all of a sudden can have the $1 million to build the retaining wall, and have the staff time or whatever, whatever it might be. So something done isn't always, what folks
Isn't
want it to
neglect.
be. Right, exactly, yeah. And so it's interesting to hear. I am curious, though, as we talk about like what the trends you're seeing, is there anything that your office does to work to mitigate these? Like if you're seeing more, I don't know, I'm just going to say PLI complaints of neglect of duty, do you communicate with Director Green and say, hey, you're getting more people complaining about this? Are your inspectors explaining to people what actually is happening in an inspection?
Yeah, because I think for a lot of us, like we started at OMI and it was pretty much, we only investigated complaints against police officers. Now we are getting all these other things that like we don't know the processes. So we do kind of rely on those directors to say, hey, can you give this an initial pass to see, is an OMI investigation warranted, or is it something somebody that knows how to talk to the individual can mitigate this situation? I will say one thing we've been getting a lot of complaints of, and that might be through 311, is missed trash pickup. And it's not an OMI issue. It is, it should be going. And so even, Sean Weigel is like, why do these keep coming to you? And it's like, because all we're doing is calling him and saying, hey, can you send a foreman out, or can you send somebody back that to pick up? So that I think is, maybe sometimes with 311 is, if they're saying it's a complaint and then it gets driven to us because we're taking complaints, like that's not necessarily, it's a performance thing. And so we do try to like send those kind of things back out.
Cool.
So.
And then I just had another question, again, a curiosity. If there was an employee who had, an OMI record on their, in their file.
Yeah.
And they left the city and then came back, would we still have record of that?
We should.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah. Now, if they are going through HR's process, so depending on what it is, then they would need to, and I think we've kind of filled in the gap. I'm not sure of the right words for that, but now the HR specialists are supposed to see if we're a current city, or we're a previous city employee, they're supposed to reach out to me to say like, hey, is there anything on their OMI history? Because I know we've been doing that, especially with the public safety bureaus with promotions. So anytime someone's getting promoted, can you check to make sure there's nothing active or nothing serious that they should know about before being promoted? So yeah, we've kind of filled that gap in a little bit.
Okay. I'm just curious about
Yep.
that. Well, unless anything has come up, anyone join online? Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, look forward to working together here in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't need to reassess, right? I can go straight in. All right. So for the next hearing, I'd like to invite up the Citizens Police Review Board. I'd like to invite those up from CPRB to join us at the table. While you're joining us, I will ask that our Budget Director, Pete McDevitt, give a brief overview of the department.
Thank you, Councilman. The Independent Citizen Police Review Board promotes responsible citizenship and respectable law enforcement through mutual accountability. The broad mandate of the Citizen Police Review Board is to provide independent review of the conduct of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. To accomplish this assignment, the board will thoroughly investigate specific allegations of misconduct, hold public hearings to examine such allegations, evaluate current police procedures, and promote safe, professional, and effective law enforcement practices through public education on rights, responsibilities, and police authority, and make recommendations to the mayor and chief of police regarding police policies and procedures. A board comprised of 7 members appointed by the mayor and city council presides over the work of the staff and determines all final dispositions of cases. The board conducts public hearings and renders findings and recommendations to the chief of police and mayor as related to the matter or complaint under review. CPRB is focused on the following: investigations and complaint disposition, community education, board and staff development, and administrative. There's a total of 9 full-time positions in 2026, which is the same as 2025. And overall, they have a $1,254 increase in their non-personnel budget for office rent. That is all I have.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. Now for the department, please introduce yourselves, including your title.
Beth Pittenger, Executive Director of the Independent Citizen Police Review Board in the City of Pittsburgh.
I'm Stephanie Hampton, the Assistant Executive Director of the Citizens Police Review Board.
Thank you. Again, we're joined by Councilman Warwick, and other members may be joining shortly. So for the department, if you would like to give an introduction or a presentation, we would be happy to hear it, or whatever.
I think Director McDevitt really, gave you the overall description of what our mission is as commissioned in the charter and as enabled in the ordinance. We have this year received, as of yesterday, 221 complaints or inquiries or something from a civilian asking us to look into related to the conduct or the policies and procedures and practices of the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. As you all know, there's been a bit of instability organizationally within the Bureau of Police. We've gone through a number of acting chiefs of police, appointed chiefs of police in the last few years. That has not been a very compatible situation for us to do our work. But in addition to the instability in the organization of the Bureau of Police, we have not had the kind of egregious complaints of conduct against officers that we've had prior to the last 4 or 5 years, which is interesting. And it's, I think, to their credit that in spite of their leadership gaps, they have been able to maintain a relatively positive relationship with the community that they're serving. We continue to deal with obstruction of our work because of the lack of the administration's cooperation to provide us with the material that our investigators require to conduct comprehensive investigations of the complaints they receive on police conduct. We came close to establishing a protocol, I believe. I like to believe that we did anyway, up until the city solicitor departed. And so all of the work we had worked with the city solicitor over the last 2 years was just scuttled and it's gone. So we'll be starting again with the new administration coming in. And that's not unusual for us. But unfortunately, in the last 4 or 5 years, what we would receive in terms of have any evidentiary value to us has diminished to nothing. We get nothing. And that's been a problem. Our relationship, though, with OMI, as you know, Ms. Bruni, they've been very cooperative. We have a very congenial relationship with them, so that where we can work together or share information, we do, and that's an efficiency that's we'd like to keep. Our investigators, and on behalf of the board, I thank you for the support that council has extended to us. We just recently engaged 2 new investigators that have just been a tremendous asset and will allow us to pursue other aspects of our work, such as providing briefing reports to council or to the public in general on critical incidents that may have happened, to research and provide advice to the board, who in turn can provide advice to the mayor and the chief of police related to policies, procedures, and best practices in law enforcement. We are very optimistic with the nomination of Mr. Williams from mayor-elect for council's consideration of confirmation as public safety director. Mr. Williams has been on the Citizen Police Review Board for several years, so he is quite familiar and aware of the struggles that sometimes we face trying to provide comprehensive summaries to the members. And in addition, the nominee for Chief of Police, Chief Jason Lando, and I refer to him with the honorific because he is still the Chief of Police in Frederick, Maryland. We've had a very good working relationship with him over the years when he was here in the city. He was always cooperative, and I can say that he will hold an officer accountable and he will defend an officer when either is appropriate. So his character and his judgment, I think, contribute to a promise of very strong leadership should he be confirmed by this body. Our investigators are certified practitioners of oversight, so they're not just people who come in and go out and investigate things, or they do have a professional credential that is provided through the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. It does require occasional travel to an annual conference to satisfy the requirements for that credential. I think that's probably the only part of our budget that we try to protect so that they can go. This year we did have one investigator travel to the conference and receive credit towards her credential. But it is a professional credential, and it gives some, it adds some integrity to their work, or to them and their credibility of their work. We also, under amendments to the Home Rule Charter in 2020, are obligated and are currently involved in a joint performance audit of the Bureau of Police with the City Controller's Office. You may recall in 2022 we did similarly an audit of practices related to certain aspects of community life and police engagement. I think we focused with, it was former Controller Lamb, and that report was published in the spring of 2022. Currently undergoing the performance audit in conjunction with the Controller, which is moving along. The Bureau has been fairly cooperative with providing the information necessary to conduct that audit. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I'm sure you have some. Whoops, sorry.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Warwick, if you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, thank you. Well, one question is, do you get body cam footage
No.
for your investigations?
We do not. Now there are qualifications to that. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the state legislature, of course, we are subordinate to them and their statutes. The body-worn camera statute was codified in 2017, and it does provide for a certain process or protocol for individuals who wish to view police body-worn camera. They can go through it, and it includes a court, and it's very complicated. The arrangement that we had, because it is so critical, and you heard Ms. Bruni say that they're able to look at and observe body-worn camera and they can resolve issues. We used to be able to do that, but in the last 4 years, that was terminated. So our investigators no longer have the opportunity, in confidence, because they are also, our investigators are sworn to a confidentiality that's extreme. And we did have a protocol that would permit them to go to police headquarters. Well, let me back up a minute. There was a cooperative agreement that they could go to OMI, and with the OMI investigators, view body-worn camera video from certain incidents that were investigating. That then moved to a requirement that our staff go to headquarters and establish a appointed time through the chief's designee, and the video would be made available to them and they could observe the video. Within the last 2 years, that was terminated completely. It was rocky, when it was working, but then it was just completely stopped, and our staff do not have the benefit of seeing any body-worn camera video. That was stopped by the law department, who directed at the time, it happened under Mr. Scarato's watch. So then no, that's the long and the short answer, with a little bit of bitterness, I guess, but no, we don't get to see body-worn camera video. We had hoped that the protocol I referred to would include that, but as I noted, that has to start all over again.
And so the 7-member board, so you have there are 9 positions,
Yes.
including both of you. So, and then there's the 7-member board,
Yes.
Volunteer board.
the volunteer board, right? I know that Terry Shields and Daylon Davis are on the board. Who are the other 5 members?
Our chairperson is Dr. Mary Jo Gershio.
Okay,
Our vice chairperson is Mr. Raymond Robinson. We have Mr. Greg Kotler. We have Miss Shields. We have Mr. Williams. Retired Police Commander Karen Dixon. And is that
That's
everybody?
7.
That's 7, I believe?
Yep, that's
Yes.
So-
We
oh,
do
go
have
ahead.
to have 2 law enforcement. I forgot Mr. Williams,
right.
Sheldon Williams.
Right.
2 law enforcement officers, law enforcement professionals, which essentially means, it's defined in the ordinance, but it essentially means someone in their career did have arrest power and served as a law enforcement officer of some level. It could have been an attorney general, it could have been an assistant U.S. attorney, whatever, but they had that power. In 2010, this body amended the ordinance and required that there be 2, only 2, but always 2 law enforcement professionals on the board. One who is a designee of the mayor, and one is a designee of councils. So Ms. Dixon is with us as the desire of the council, and Mr. Williams has been retained. He is a mayoral appointee, but he was retained because there was no appointment to succeed him. And in that process, to avoid the political whimsy that we have seen in the past, there was a qualification that if the appointing authority fails to act within 30 days of the incumbent's term expiration, that incumbent was automatically re-upped as though newly appointed to 4 years, so that it protected them from what has happened to this board in the past, where a former mayor actually just eliminated 5 members because we were in litigation and they didn't want us to be in litigation. So at any rate, that's the process, and those are the members. And Mr. Sheldon Williams is the other law enforcement professional, and as you know, he has been nominated by Mayor-elect to be Director of Public Safety, which means there will be an
have to step
opening
down, yeah.
or a vacancy in that law enforcement seat, which is designated a mayoral seat.
got it. That's the mayoral seat?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So could you describe a little bit the relationship between you and your staff and the board, like the board members? I mean, I don't mean the relationship like the personal relationship. I mean like how you work together, what the... So you get a complaint and then, and then it goes...
Our process is, we have an
Right.
intake director, a lead investigator, an intake director. And she receives all of the incoming contacts. They are all logged. They enter into a preliminary inquiry stage, and that PI stage is to occur within 10 days or before the next regularly scheduled board meeting. At that time, the case is assigned to an investigator, who then establishes what is the basics, like do these people exist, did the incident occur, that sort of thing. Is the allegation, is it something that has to do with police conduct within our jurisdiction, and it's administratively intact. That is prepared then into a summary, and that summary then is reviewed by myself and goes to the board at their next scheduled meeting. Now, many years ago, the preliminary inquiry, the dispositions for administrative deficiencies, like if it was out of jurisdiction, it was about a Port Authority officer or an Allegheny County officer, then they get closed. And they delegated that to me. But all other preliminary inquiries, there is no terminal disposition that does not go to the board. They make those decisions. There's not like myself or Stephanie or Michelle, we can't just say, just close it. No.
So
It's
if it's
disposed of.
about, if it is indeed about a Pittsburgh police officer, right, and it's then it automatically goes to the board.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And the investigator does the summary that then goes to the board. Okay.
Yes. And those are, they are not public documents. So then the board receives it, and they can determine whether they wish to go forward to a full investigation. And if it's been in a full investigation and it's recommended that it be extended for 30 days or to the next regularly scheduled board meeting, to allow for the gathering of additional information, or there may be a court hearing coming up, or whatever it may be, the board can then extend it for another 30 days. On occasion, cases are recommended to go into suspension because something is not readily available within the time frame of those two status, full extended plus 30. And so it may go into a suspended status. But the board orders all of those things. And then if they decide that the case does not merit a public hearing, then they close that case. The board does. If they determine it should go to a public hearing, then if that hearing is scheduled, a pre-hearing conference is established, the public hearing is conducted. Oftentimes we borrow your chambers to do that. And there is a special prosecutor that prosecutes the case on my behalf because of the way the rules are written. It's the executive director responsible for the prosecution of the case, similar to what you would see in an attorney general or a district attorney situation going to a grand jury. The individual does not have private standing. They can't come in with their own lawyer. But the issue is of such import that the board feels resolving it is critically important to the relationship between the police and the community. So it's prosecuted like a mini trial. The officer is represented by the union lawyer. We have a special prosecutor. They present evidence, they examine and cross-examine the witnesses. The hearing officer is the board's independent solicitor who makes rulings related to evidence or process. 3 members of the board serve as a hearing panel. At the conclusion of that presentation, the record is closed and there is an official formal court record made. They retire and they deliberate on what they heard, and they determine whether or not the findings are there to, yes, there was misconduct, and as a result they make recommendations to the chief and the mayor. Or they find that the evidence does not support the allegation and the accusation, and the case is dismissed, and with no further action. If they do make recommendations, then the mayor and the chief have 30 days of receipt to respond to the board and inform the board if they're accepting those recommendations and implementing them as offered, or if they're implementing them in some modified form, or if they're outrightly rejecting those recommendations. And upon receipt of that, then the board takes note, and that's the end of it. Of course, the individuals involved are informed of that, but that's the process.
So of the 221 complaints in 2025, how many of those got past the preliminary inquiry?
I don't know that offhand. But most of them.
Most of them got
Yes.
past the preliminary inquiry.
Yes.
How many of them did the board decide to do a full investigation?
Most of them.
Oh, okay.
The preliminary is the equivalent of finding of cause.
Right.
So usually they do move them all.
And then how many went to public hearing?
None.
None.
We have not had a public hearing in a few years.
So that means essentially that the board, on most of them, decided that there was no wrongdoing on the part of the officer,
That's correct.
outside of perhaps something minor.
Now, even if it was minor, they could proceed with that. Now, sometimes what happens is they will determine,
And when I say minor, I mean like
most of the complaints
gruff
we receive
language or something like that.
are related to their demeanor. They're related to the individual officer's demeanor.
Right.
Their courtesy.
I mean, not
Their
not
attitude.
okay. We want courteous and friendly.
Right,
but-
we do,
right.
but sometimes it's an interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And people think that the officer should have behaved in some other way. If procedurally the officer has done as the officer was trained, you can't hold them accountable for something.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at the training and say the training is deficient, and you make a recommendation related to the training. and then the Bureau has to correct that. But if an officer is just cocky, that could go to a hearing. But that's also, you have to weigh the efficiencies of that. Do you want to spend a couple $1,000s to have a hearing because an officer, came back with a smart remark once? The board can note that.
And does the board, I assume the board votes on whether or not to proceed with the full, and the board votes on whether or not to proceed with the full investigation?
Yes, the board does, and a full investigation can be a majority, but they cannot conduct a meeting, an official meeting, or take official action without a quorum being present.
And the full investigation is then performed by your investigators?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what we do.
Okay. And then it comes back to the board
Yes,
after the investigation
the next month.
to make the decision, okay, do we take this to a public hearing or not? And none of them went to public hearing.
Not in the last couple of years, no.
So do the investigations make a recommendation, or are they just the facts?
Oh, they make a recommendation, but it's based on their recitation of fact contained in the summary. They don't opine on whether in those facts. They're just saying this is what we found.
Do they recommend whether or not to move to public hearing? Or?
Yes.
Oh, they do. They make a recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
And did they recommend? Were there any that they recommended? I'm just curious about were there any where they recommended a public hearing, but the board voted no?
No.
Did they recommend public hearing on any of them?
No.
So none got a recommendation for public hearing.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
If there was a recommendation as such, it would have been conducted. There's no discretion to that. Once the board makes a decision, now that's the other thing, the board does have discretion. And if they don't feel it should go forward to a hearing, there may be a question involved, but it's rarely anything other than what I described, somebody making a smart comment or something. They have the discretion whether to move that to a hearing or not on their own. The staff's recommendations are strictly guidance.
Right. They vote on whether or not.
They vote on everything, yes.
And I'm just curious,
Yeah.
what is and I'm obviously, are the votes generally unanimous? Is the board divided? I've never sat in on these meetings, so I'm just kind of curious.
Well, that's a good, opportunity. The meetings have been, since COVID, remote, and now they do meet out in the community a few times a year, but they're also remote because we found that invited more participation, more people came. Now, you asked me did they vote in?
I was just curious about the nature of is it
Are they
a
divided?
7-0 vote most of the time, or is it like a
Generally,
split,
what
like
we
3-4?
occasionally have is someone may abstain. They may abstain. There's also a process requiring them to be to recuse themselves if there is a personal conflict.
Oh, right, sure.
Or the perception. And they have to put that on the record, and they won't be voting. But they require 4 to conduct business, and they require 4 to order a public hearing in the affirmative. And if there are only 4 of them there, 3 will carry for a status change.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
The policy issues that are today much different than they were 15 or 20 years ago. But that's an area that we wish to develop our own expertise with. We're pretty good with recognizing what the best practices are. We stay informed. But we now have the capacity that we can actually do the research and produce a good, solid report on it, which could be helpful to council, to the police department, but also to our board, so that they stay up to date, and contemporary practices are what they're judging from, not from something that's aged.
Yeah, great. I don't think I have any. That's an interesting idea. I don't think I have. Well, I know one thing that I am interested in, but it's not really related to citizens' complaints as much as, I'm curious, and it's something I should ask for, is the number on sort of homicides and non-fatal shootings that end in charges, right, where they identify somebody. What happens after that in court is up to the courts, but where our detectives are in fact identifying somebody, and when not, right?
I think what you're referring to would be a data point known as a conviction rate, and that information is not kept. We've been suggesting that over the years.
I mean, it's just to be because, I am interested in understanding more about how hard is and I don't know, so I don't want to make any assumption, but how hard is our Bureau working to find out, when someone is shot in the city of Pittsburgh, whether fatally or otherwise, how hard are we working to make sure we find out who did it?
There are
and get that person, off the street. Yeah.
Two things there: the conviction rate that I referred to, and then the clearance rate. And the clearance rate is information that is retained and it's reported to the state police. There is a uniform crime report, and that clearance rate has improved over the years, but it's still not terrific. That's the sort of thing that we are anxious to be able to delve into, to pull that information and see, well, why is it? A few years ago, it was only like 35%. It's not that now. They've improved. But it is something that we look at. And then on the individual performance level, the conviction rate of an officer's arrest is important. With the caveat, though, that, of course, those conviction rates are going to be influenced by what the district attorney does. If they cut a deal,
right,
they make a plea deal, that officer's conviction rate's going to take a hit, but it can be qualified. At least we know that it's going through, because one of the issues that you find for minor cases or minor charges is that there can be a number of continuances, and then it sort of just falls away, or there's not the continuity within the case handling within the Bureau. That if an officer all of a sudden isn't available, they don't show up for court, it's gone. That shouldn't be. That continuity should be tightened up, and we made those recommendations a couple of years ago. That if it looks like that, there's always somebody else who can fill in for the arresting officer if that person's no longer available because they died or they're sick or there's whatever. So there are little parts of the daily routine that would maybe answer some of those kinds of questions that are more abstract than the common operational questions, and that's what we want to be able to understand and provide that background to you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm most specifically focused on, right, the incidents of gun violence. And again, like I said, I don't want to imply, because I don't know what the numbers look like on charges filed in those cases. But the kind of the lore, so to speak, seems to be like, oh, well, no one will talk, so no one will talk to the police, so we don't know. We can't. There's nothing we can do, and that does not feel acceptable when we're talking about that level of violence.
Well, there was about 10 or 12 years, maybe even more than that, 15 years ago, a suggestion from a retired police officer that the Bureau consider developing a neighborhood response team. That neighborhood response team would be deployed in areas of our city where they're sick neighborhoods. They have a lot of problems. There's poverty, there's violent crime, there's drug use, there's substance abuse issues. They really need a lot of help. And that team would include a police officer, a mental health professional, public health person, professional, and maybe an educator or someone with children, a child specialist. And they would go door to door to door and help assess what are the needs of this household or this neighborhood. What are the negative influences? And one of the side benefits of that would be the officer developing a network of information where people could convey that kind of information privately to the officer and not have to be concerned about being targeted for being telling on people. That was never implemented. At the time, it was Chief Harper. He was interested, but other things kind of happened. And that didn't happen in terms of the neighborhood. But now you have this whole Office of Community Health and Wellness, the co-response model that was deployed and then stopped, was almost like maybe on the cutting edge of maybe leading to something like that, where people who needed help were going to be visited not only by a mental health professional or whatever, substance abuse, whatever it may be, but there would be a law enforcement presence also, where some of those relationships could evolve and trusted information could be shared. We have now to wait and see what the new administration does.
Sure.
But it's something that people are still afraid, but it's not an excuse, it's not a permissible excuse for the police to not aggressively pursue an investigation into a violent crime.
Yeah, and I mean, I do want to just, for the record, clarify that, we do have through our REACH program and other programs that are both, safe passages at schools and various programs where we are addressing community violence, both violent incidences that happen and, a REACH team member is assigned to the zones. That's my understanding. And then when there is an incident of gun violence, the REACH team member is there to kind of do that work, right? At any rate, without going too much into detail on that, but I agree, and I do want to see that work continue into the next administration, to be sure. But that is an interesting thing to sort of, in terms of the review board, if that would be an area that could be looked at.
They're
among
empowered. They're
right.
empowered to do that in the charter and in the ordinance. They can look into all policies, practices, procedures, hiring, recruitment, retention, anything that involves that unit, that department, the Bureau of Police. They are empowered to look into.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That actually had never been something that I thought of. I always thought of it exclusively around like misconduct, where a citizen says, I was mistreated by an officer and files a complaint. But it is interesting to know that there could be a larger scope.
And it's an invitation to the police to participate in that process as well. And we do enjoy a relatively collegial relationship with the police. That took years for the board to develop that rapport, but I can say honestly that it is a cooperative situation now, except where there is a valid reason not to cooperate. But, generally the board is recognized as having the interests of the Bureau and the officers equally as the interest of the well-being of our community and how we keep them together and healthy and respectful. Yeah, it's way beyond just complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't think I have any more questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I want to start off. One thing, I'm reminded when you talk to us that you have an unbelievable knowledge of police operations, and maybe some of these things should have been questions that we talked to with the police when they came in front of us. But I was curious and I feel silly for not knowing this, but the difference between a conviction rate and a clearance rate. What is the distinction and difference between those two?
Well, the clearance rate is the number of violent crimes that there's been an actor identified, and they know who did it, and they've been prosecuted, charged, or that crime has been answered. We understand that crime, who did it, and they're being held accountable. The conviction rate is if you have X number of charges, say assault charges, how many of those assault charges have been adjudicated?
I see.
And that can vary, but as a performance indicator for an individual officer, it would have a lot of value, so that they're not just arresting people, and out of 100 arrests, there's like 2 convictions. Well, what are they doing? That's the difference. It's just a performance indicator more so than, well, it could certainly contribute overall. I mean, a police supervisor would be interested in knowing that, and the police supervisor could be held accountable for what their subordinates are actually doing. But that's the difference.
Okay. That's that's helpful to know. I don't think I was aware of that before. And again, I always appreciate your knowledge on this, and police operations kind of especially in ways like that we don't, as council members, we don't usually delve into.
But that's why you have people like us.
Yes.
And we appreciate
one of the
your
reasons.
support for that, too.
One of the reasons. Yeah, I mean, so, I have a very good relationship with my commander, but a lot of those kind of the investigative work when violent crimes come in, I don't, that isn't his team that's working on that. So those are always the things where I'm hearing kind of everything second or third hand when I'm asking what happened here or there. So. I guess the only question that I really have for you is kind of at this time, what is it that this council can do to help you in your work?
Leave us alone. That's all. Just let us do our job. And your support in over the years has been certainly critically important, because we are out there on our own. We have a good relationship with a lot of parts of the city, but we're required to be independent, objective, and impartial. And as a result, that limits the kind of interactions that we have with others. We're always at your disposal, though, if there's some question you have, or a policy question, or even a definitional operational thing. We're there to support and provide that information to you if we can. If we can't, we'll go find out what it is. We're available as a tool to inform council. We, over the years, have been involved with some of Councilwoman Cale Smith's legislation, former Councilman Burgess, where we were extensively involved in developing language and substantive input, because we were able to do some of that research in an independent fashion. We have no political aspirations here. We can't. Mm-hmm. And as a result, we're pretty much, in the middle. When both sides are annoyed with us, we're doing what we're supposed to do. But, we do, and I think we will do whatever we can to support your endeavors. And I say that kind of, leave us alone. I don't mean that, you know what I mean.
Sure, yes.
Just leave us alone. We're okay. We have what we need. We appreciate having the additional staff from the last 2 years, which has been a huge improvement for us, to be able to do things that we weren't able to do before, or if we did them before, we weren't satisfied with the quality of it. So we thank you.
Since it's a budget hearing, just to add a little bit more context, CPRB is the only department that is, to speak to the independence of it, it's not connected to the mayor's office or council or anything. You are by yourself because you are the independent Citizen Police Review Board. So that was very well said.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's and also I work for the board. I do not work for the mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that there are probably a couple other areas of the city I would like to have kind of that floating relationship that you have, that you're the only one like that. I think that it would be, there's some things I think would be wise to consider that, but as it stands right now, it's just you. So
it would be like having an office of the Inspector General in the city, an IG's office, which would be more comprehensive, more covering more, a lot of what Aaron's office, what OMI does. Like blending all of those functions or putting them where they belong, like the work that OMI has to do in terms of background checks and things of that nature that are much more of a human resource civil service function. But they do it. It's burdensome for their office, but they still do it. But having those functions maybe distributed differently. But what it sounds like an IG's office would be the equivalent of that, except that we are created independently and we have our own little spot in the charter, so we wouldn't be able to be absorbed. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, fully understand that, and I've heard wild tales about the referendums to create you and that period of time in this body, but.
Yeah. Well, the people took it into their own hands and made it happen. The council couldn't get the fifth vote, right?
Yeah.
But here we are, and we've all grown together. And for our officers, these officers on the job now, we've been with them their whole career. So we're not that awful thing that we were to the veterans, that being shoved down their throat. You have to now deal with this body. Now we're just part of life, and our ability to provide an objective view of whatever it is that's the subject of review, it's an asset. And I can say honestly that this board has never been corrupted politically in any way. That they, turn around and do something for the good of somebody's personal gain. No, they have not done that. And they've been challenged. They have been challenged many times. But they have endured, and they've maintained that impartiality and objectivity and apolitical positioning, which members come in, and we've had some, and I won't go on about this too much, but with an agenda, change that board, get rid of so and so, do this, do that. But when those people come and they get on the board, they transcend the populism, they transcend all of the activism. They transcend all those things that may have had a bias attached to it when they get there, and realize that what an awesome responsibility they have. They're dealing with people's reputations and people's well-being. You don't just go in, casually just go and, point the finger at somebody and say, you did something wrong. You have to base your discussion and your findings on facts. And the board they've always transcended that. And so I think their integrity has been intact because of that. And then because of the peer pressure too, okay, you might have that opinion, but they mentor each other, and as a result, we have a real solid group of individuals that have served consistently in the last 28 years. So I see no reason to expect anything different in the future.
Great. Well, anything else, Councilwoman? All right. So if there are no further questions, can I have a motion to recess this meeting?
So moved. Second.